bringing you all the latest Nottoway County high school and Bearcat sports each week.
10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45.
Starring Erin Sorensen and Jon Dykstra on the Maryville Forum Sports Podcast.
He ran it back 109 yards. They're not going to keep him off the field.
Coming to you from the campus of Northwest Missouri State University.
Welcome back to another edition of the Maryville Forum Sports Podcast, brought to you by Compass Dental Doctors Bruce Twaddle and Brian Viertaler. We're going to kick it off right away with Athlete of the Week. As your host here always, I'm Erin Sorensen with Jon Dykstra. My Athlete of the Week this week, if you watched any Bearcat sports, you probably noticed her in the papers with Maddy Bruder. She had a very big weekend and week. They kicked it off on Tuesday against Missouri Western with a 3-and-out win. She had 14 kills, 1 ace, 2 blocks, and 13 digs. So she really found herself in just about every column of the statistics this week. A girl came underneath the net against Bo West. She tweaked her ankle a little bit, but that really just speaks to Maddy's performance, because even with that ankle tweak, she led the team. She stayed confident. She continued to do things for her team to push past and get the first sweep against Mo West at home since 2010. So well deserved by Maddy Bruder. She had yet another incredible week as a leader and as a player out there on the court. So I'm going to kick it over to Jon with his Athlete of the Week.
Yeah, my Athlete of the Week comes from 8-man football once again, and it's Drew Quinlan, the quarterback for South Holt Nottoway Holt, and they got a big 82-36 win over DeKalb this week. Drew was nothing short of spectacular with 410 passing yards, 9 passing touchdowns, 73 rushing yards, and a touchdown on the ground as well. So he accounted for 10 total touchdowns against DeKalb. So just a really impressive week for them as they, after a slow start to the season, kind of continue to roll through this middle stretch of the schedule.
Sounds like a great weekend for him, but it was kind of a tough week actually to pick Athlete of the Week, especially when we're talking about Spoofhound Sports. We had a lot of people making their run for Athlete of the Week.
Yeah, it was a busy week. Softball played 9 games in the last 8 days actually. And among those was a no-hitter by sophomore Ashlyn Alexander. And it's not often that you have to pick someone else for Athlete of the Week when somebody throws a no-hitter. And Ashlyn also had 3 home runs over this week-long stretch as well. So she was getting it done on the mound and at the plate for sure. As softball, they took first in the Stanberry tournament last week, and then this week they took second in the North Andrew tournament.
So it's definitely a big week for softball, but it seems like as we've been going through this season early, they've really kind of got off to a hot start, but yet they're not even the only Spoofhound sport that's had a hot start to the season as well.
Every Spoofhound team has a winning record, which is something I noted of last week, and that just speaks to kind of the depth of the athletes we have here with seven sports going on. You would think one would be down, or somebody would be struggling at least, but really volleyball continues to play well. They got a win in Cameron this week. They got a couple wins this week. Cross country, they were off this week, but they've had a good start to the season. Soccer got some more wins this week. It's just it's kind of piling up for the Spoofhounds, and it's just a great start to the season. And one of those sports that's off to a great start is football, and boy, did they get off to a great start in their game against Cameron this week.
It was another big weekend, and at times you almost expect it now from these kids as well as they've been playing on both sides of the ball. But definitely a huge weekend with a 72-12 victory over Cameron. So Jon, you'll go ahead and take us through the first minute of that game.
Yeah, they had a 24-0 lead after a minute into the game, which personally I've never seen before. Eli Dallas, who we talked plenty about, had a 72-yard kickoff return to begin the game. And then on the first offensive play of the game for Cameron, Connor Weiss picked off a pass and went 23 yards for a touchdown. And he was actually not even a starter but until this week. With Jason Bagley hurt, he filled in at safety and came up big, obviously. And then the first offensive play from scrimmage for the Spoofhounds, after Weiss stripped a fumble out and was able to get them the ball back, Ben Walker threw his only pass of the game, and it was a 20-yard touchdown to Tate Oglesby.
Yeah, and that was 24-0 again in the first minute. If you missed that, that is what John said. Just another big game. Definitely everybody on the offensive side was really kind of getting involved. John, how many players were actually getting involved for the Spoofhounds this week to really make it a team victory?
Well, we've talked the last couple of weeks about Tyler Houchin and Eli Dallas. They're both returning All-State players, but neither one has really had their breakout game yet this year, and that's because carries have been so evenly spread out with how the Spoofhounds are kind of dominating these games of late. Eli finished with only 3 carries, while Tyler Houchin had 4, and they had 11 different players carry the ball in this game, which is just a tribute to, one, their depth, because they just have that many guys that they can rotate in, and Coach Matt Webb, frankly, not wanting to make it appear like they were trying to run up the score or anything. Cameron actually outscored Maryville 12-7 in the second half because Maryville they were trying to keep it somewhat respectable for Cameron, who's still a building program, and I know Coach Webb has a lot of respect for their coach over there too.
Yeah, and definitely last week we got the opportunity to talk to Matt Webb, and he did talk about the respect that he has for that program, as well as he kind of talked about how it's nice with Tyler and Eli to kind of get those guys on the sidelines and almost be leaders, but almost kind of like coaches to these younger kids and to really help them along the way. But let's talk about the other side of the ball. It was 66-0 at halftime, so let's talk about the defense a little bit.
Yeah, the defense lost their 3-game shutout streak, but I think you kind of have to put an asterisk next to that one because they didn't score until the third quarter, and it was against mostly freshmen and backup JV players. There were not a lot of starters or anybody who gets any kind of varsity minutes in there at that point, but they had a couple long passes that ended up being touchdowns. But overall, the defense just played great. Like I said, they had 5 turnovers in the first quarter. Connor Weiss should have had another interception return for a touchdown, but there was a block in the back that was pretty far behind the play, actually, so it really didn't affect it. But Weiss forced 3 turnovers himself. Tate Oglesby had a pick 6 and another interception too. It was just a dominant performance from the defense this week.
And let's take it a little bit away from the statistics, because most people that know Spoofhound Sports or even are familiar with Maryville, the longevity of the success in this program has been many, many seasons. Do you think that a lot of that success comes from moments like these games when, like you said, you can get those freshmen and those JV guys in there to get real minutes, whether the score is 66-0 or not, but they're still getting real-time minutes?
Well, we talked about it last week with Matt Webb, like you said, but after the game I talked to Eli Dallas about it, and he talked about how he's excited to see those younger guys get in there, even if it means less opportunities for himself, because he wants to see this program continue to, he said, grow. They've kind of grown to their state champions. So I think continue on that level, though, after he's gone and after guys like Tyler Houchin are gone and even Tate Oglesby and those guys. So that's the thing. And to steal a line from Matt Webb, he loves to say tradition never graduates, and that's kind of what they have built there. When you can get guys in these lopsided games and get guys varsity experience, that's only going to help you down the road.
Yeah, and like you said, with Matt Webb's quote about tradition never graduates, that's kind of speaks to this team in the way that they have been successful for many years. So, John, another great week for Spoofhound football, and we look forward to many more weeks of covering great games for them. But let's kick it over to some Bearcat sports.
Yeah, you talked about Maddy a little bit at the beginning, but volleyball just dominated this week and got off to a great start. They picked up 3 wins. It was just a really good week. I was there for the Western game, and she was obviously really good, but that whole team stepped up, especially once she got hurt. It was really impressive to see them step up like that and finish that off. And then in cross country, Kareem, and I don't want to butcher his last name, so we'll just call him Kareem A. He took 12th in the Chili Pepper Invite in Arkansas, and that's out of 441 runners. That is obviously a very good finish for him. So they just continue to kind of roll through this, and soccer's in action later today, actually on Sunday as we speak here. So we'll see if they can kind of turn around the struggles they've had of late as they try to build under first-year coach Mark Gordon.
Yeah, and with this first-year coach, I've talked to a lot of people, and he's really trying just to establish that new culture. Like we've talked about how kind of Mel Churchma, we talked last week, how he kind of had to build a new culture with the football team. So we're kind of watching that all build. They did fall this weekend to Lindenwood, and like we said, it's the 23rd today, Sunday. They'll play UCM at home. So they'll just, I think it's one of those things where coach and the girls, they're just trying to look to improve every week and kind of find out what works for them. But
they've started the year with a very tough schedule too. UCM was the number 1 ranked team in the country when they played them. Then they played Missouri Western, who actually just beat UCM. So 2 of literally the top teams in the country they had to open their schedule with. They've also lost to Lindenwood, which was probably, if I think Mark Gordon was here, I think he'd probably say that was the most disappointing performance probably they had. But there, again, you just have to be patient while this builds. It can't happen overnight.
yeah, and it's like you said, one of those things that it doesn't happen overnight, it builds, and this is a new coach, and he'll continue. I think with his recruiting processes, he can get his hands on more of this program to really build up. But I want to go back to the volleyball court really quick and talk about this Missouri Western game that Northwest had. That was on Tuesday the 18th. Like I said earlier, it was the first time that they had swept Mo West at home since 2010. John was there at the game. We talked about Maddy. One of the quotes that I really liked that you actually got from Maddy after the game, she kind of talked about how, I believe it was in the Mo West game, how she kind of looked at Sophia and said, hey, I need your help, and Sophia answered that call really well, and I think that speaks to this team and the way they really work well together.
That depth just seems to be developing with this team. I mean, they've had it before, but it was younger depth, and now with those freshmen becoming sophomores and Sophia being a senior now, they've just got a lot of weapons on the team, it seems like, to go to and kind of take some of the pressure off of Maddy, or with Maddy's a little hobbled like she was this week, to really just pick up that slack and be able to use her as more of a decoy, at which they definitely did at the end of that first set to rally and get a win there when she was in the most pain probably of the day there.
Like you said, just the depth that they have, and talking about the experience, those young girls last year, they were freshmen. A lot of them got good playing time. At times, you could still they were still adjusting to the idea of college volleyball. So now they're sophomores. They've got that experience under their belt. Now, John, I've talked about Bethany Elkins quite a bit. Yeah. You got to see her play on Tuesday, and she's the one that we talked about. She's the middle hitter. She's 5'9", so she's traditionally shorter than most middle hitters that she'll see. Didn't play last year. She got her chance to step up and play, and she has just taken full advantage of her playing time.
She was, you hyped her up correctly last week, because she was very impressive. Her and both her and the other freshman, Rachel Studevalt, were very impressive to me. And the first chance getting to see them, we talked about that experience or gaining experience with the other players, but they have come in as freshmen and just added to that already strong core that Northwest has.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's so exciting with this team, is seniors all the way down to freshmen. People are contributing, teams are contributing, and I think Amy Worth, she's talked a lot about how she wants to incorporate just the team being together, so improving their chemistry off the court so they can bring it onto the court. And I think that's been a key to their early success. We are back on the Maryville Forum Sports Podcast, brought to you by Compass Dental, Doctors Bruce Twaddle and Brian Viertaler. I'm joined with the publisher of the Maryville Forum, Phil Cobb, who was able to watch the broadcast of the UCO and Northwest football game this weekend. The Bearcats fell to the Broncos 31-21. Phil, can you kind of tell us a little bit about this UCO team?
Yeah, I think we just have to give a little tip of the cap to Central Oklahoma. They obviously did their homework, and they were prepared for Northwest. No secret that Northwest is going to get everyone's best shot, and UCO certainly gave us that Saturday. They were able to come out, complete a big pass play at the beginning of the game, and get the long touchdown and set the tone for the game, and that really kind of carried throughout most of the game, really up until the fourth quarter.
And like you said, it was 14-0, right? Kind of the jump start. And like you kind of said, a lot of teams come out to give their best to Northwest because they know the history of this program and this team who can be quite dangerous. There was a 41-yard field goal from Parker Sampson. So right there in the first quarter, the ball was moving, just not maybe the way that we've seen it in the past.
Yeah, they really, they really relied on their freshman quarterback, Braden Wright, quite a bit. And, he was able to complete a lot of passes. He actually got a lot of the receivers involved in the game, and I think that's reason why maybe fans shouldn't be concerned moving forward, even though we could be seeing some of our first growing pains from Braden after being spoiled the first couple of weeks with just unbelievable performances from the young quarterback. It looked at first like maybe Braden wasn't quite on the same page with some of his receivers. Things just weren't gelling and working the way that they wanted them to.
And yeah, that's the thing with this young quarterback, and he actually didn't have any interceptions. So like you said, we are kind of seeing those growing pains, and especially I think sometimes it's difficult for people who don't break down the game, like last week with that 63-0 win. They're two very different opponents, and like you said, we're kind of almost seeing our first bit of adversity here with this team. At halftime, it ended up being 14-3 going into halftime. And then right out of the gates, it kind of seemed like UCO was back and ready to go after halftime.
Yeah, they actually they got up 28-3, and so Northwest, I think they wanted to keep the ball on the ground a little more. They seemed like they were having some success on the ground, but then when UCO got that third touchdown and made it 21-3, it kind of forced Northwest to go to the air more, and they weren't connecting on everything that they wanted to, and the officials were calling it pretty close in the secondary. There were several pass interference calls, defensive holding calls going both ways against both teams. So that it felt like maybe that was a little bit of an issue for the Bearcats.
And then, like you said, that 21-3. Then after that came a 72-yard pass for UCO to make it 28-3. So really, just a big third quarter for them. But then the fourth quarter, it was kind of like the Bearcats really. I probably would accredit a lot of this to the team and the way that they're built and the way that Coach Wright coaches them. The fourth quarter, they kind of had a little bit of an answer for UCO.
They did. They were able to get the ball moving, and like I said earlier, they were able to take advantage of some penalties on UCO defense and move the ball down the field, and they at one point in time, they were within 2 touchdowns and a field goal of getting back in the game and potentially taking the lead. So ending the game, they can take a little bit of momentum, a little bit of positivity going into next week against Emporia. And, it's just a good sign that being faced with adversity, that the young quarterback was able to spread the ball around a lot. He himself was able to pick up some yards on the ground. They proved that they can play against adversity when they need to. And
I think that really, in the way Coach Wright leads the team, in that fourth quarter they had 18 points. Wasn't enough, and just wasn't enough time on the clock once they kind of got things going. Ended up losing 31-21, like I said. But, with Braden Wright being young, like you said, and there's a lot of talent around him, as well as he's very talented. So I think, like you said, with Emporia, there's a lot to look forward to, especially when you got a guy like Sean Bain on your side. He actually caught his 27th career touchdown pass. So he passed Steve Hansley, who had 26 during 1983-1985. So now Sean Bain sits solely at number 5 for career touchdown. So how exciting is that for these guys to kind of carry that into next week, like Emporia, like you said?
Yeah, I think you're going to see maybe a little bit of a new energy out of the Bearcats next week. They're going to be fired up and ready to go after coming off of that loss against UCO, and that obviously the Bearcat fans are going to turn out for Military Appreciation Day, and it's going to be a rocking time at Bearcat Stadium again.
And we're definitely looking forward to that game. And like you said, Northwest is always ready to play, it seems like, but something like this will definitely fuel them because they're going to want to go out there and really show out.
Yeah, this isn't the first time that Northwest has lost to an opponent in the regular season that they think they probably shouldn't have. But historically, Northwest has done a great job. They have an experienced coaching staff, and they're going to be able to make the adjustments that they need to and bounce right back from this. And I don't think there's any reason for concern moving forward.
And that's kind of like we talked a little bit earlier about the Spoofhounds and almost the longevity, you could say, of success throughout the program. And that's kind of what the way Northwest is. And the fact of the matter is you can't win every single game, though at times it seems like Northwest could or has. But like you said, this shouldn't be a sign of concern for fans or for this team, because I think we're going to see a big game against Emporia at home with a big crowd like you mentioned.
This just could be the wake-up call that Northwest needs. And, winning big like they did the first couple of weeks, it's easy to hide some mistakes. So, you get in a game like they got into Saturday, and those mistakes start to rear their ugly head, so to speak. And so that's going to give the coaching staff the ability to identify some of those things that they need to work on, and I'm sure the players will respond during this week of practice.
Well, we're very excited. You can, once that game happens on Saturday, you can read about it on the MaryvilleForum.com, as well as we will release the podcast next week on Monday. So, Phil, thank you very much for coming in and joining us this week.
Thank you, Erin.
We are back on the Maryville Forum Sports Podcast. This week we have another special guest with us. With a strong week for the volleyball team, we thought no better than to bring team captain and a senior, Maddy Bruder, onto the show. Maddy, thank you for being here with us. Let's kind of kick it off, and let's go back to Tuesday when you guys took care of Mo West at home.
That was just a really exciting win for us, not only because it was Rivalry Tuesday and we were obviously playing Mo West, but it was just a really good way for us to kind of just start off some pretty high-intensity competition, and we just kind of stuck to the game plan for what coaches put in front of us and took care of business in 3. So
let's go into that just a little bit. I know Mo West has obviously always been a rival of you guys. This is a new year for them, kind of. They've lost some players, so they're really just kind of trying to get back to where they were. But there was some close sets there. It wasn't huge blowouts or anything like that. How do you guys kind of keep that mentality that we're still going to try to finish this in 3 and get the job done and not play extra sets that we don't need to?
Yeah, so I think our biggest motivator throughout the 3 sets and whatnot was just last year we obviously went to 5 with them and it didn't end out in our favor, and we just know if we can keep going and take care of teams in 3 sets, like, one, that's just better for us, but it also just allows us to create a intensity and a momentum going forward that we just, with that mindset, take teams in 3, like, get it done with, especially if it's a team we know we can take care of in 3 sets. That's just our mentality going forward, is just kind of like I hinted at before, stick to the game plan of what we want to do to execute things, and then the rest will take care of itself.
That really was one of the big stories with you guys. You really did kind of take care of things and execute. But let's talk about this roster and how, obviously, essentially, you have a very similar team that you did last year with just losing some seniors, but this group of sophomores that were freshmen last year got some decent playing time last year, but the adjustment from high school to college, no matter what high school you play at, it's still an adjustment, and at times you could see that they still needed time. This year we're seeing them as sophomores. They've had game time experience, and they're really kind of adding to, the older girls and kind of making a complete package. How important have they been for you seniors to really kind of make this final drive in your last year here?
A very crucial part. They just from the beginning have bought in to everything that not only coach has set in front of us, but they really buy into what the upperclassmen want to do and just like our goals. Like, it's so easy to mentor them and to lead them because they do want to succeed so much, and they want to be the best that they can be, and they want to not be good for themselves, but they want to do good for the team, and everything that they do is for this team and these goals that we have set forward. So it's very easy for Olivia and I especially to lead these girls, and they really truly buy into our systems and what we want to do this year as a team.
And you guys kind of look like a complete unit, all the way from freshmen all the way up to seniors. So, and I think that kind of really helped cement that win over Missouri Western. You moved on this weekend, played Missouri Southern on Friday, Southwest Baptist on Saturday, took 2 wins on those. Missouri Southern was another sweep, dropped a set to Southwest Baptist, but it didn't shake you too bad. What do you kind of take from those games to move in and continue to improve as we progress through the season?
I think it really just gives us a better idea of how we need to internally push ourselves. It's just when you play teams that don't necessarily run as high of an offense, aren't necessarily doing the things that we have been seeing with Lindenwood and UCM and Mo West, it's a fight against yourself. It's a fight against you and your teammates, and it's just finding out how we work best in those situations where we are literally combating ourselves at that point. And when we're kind of defeating ourselves in a way. So it gave us a really good idea and an even better idea of moving forward in practices this week of how coaches can put us in that state in practices where we're not only fighting the team across from us, the other side, but they're also finding ways to get out of that and move forward and really just find new ways to push us.
And I think that's really exciting, too. I believe it's season 7 with Coach Worth. So, you know, a lot of people talk about 5 seasons with a new coach. After 5 seasons, they've been able to recruit their players, essentially. They've been able to build the program that they want to build. And I think this is a big year for the team as well as for Coach, kind of just the last year with a big group of seniors. But I want to kind of touch on a couple players here. Obviously, the entire team works very well together and has added a lot. There's 2 girls that I really want to talk about because throughout the first 4 weeks of this podcast, they've been kind of, one of the girls has been what we would kind of give an award for probably the most consistent, maybe somebody who doesn't shine out as much in the media, but somebody who's just been extremely consistent for you guys, and that's fellow senior Sophia Schleppenbach. Can you just talk about how her kind of no-shake mentality has kind of been, when you guys need her, she's been there almost every single time?
All you have to do is look at her and just tell her, hey, we need you. Like, we need your help. We need your kind of that rock solidness that you were talking about just a little bit ago. And you just tell her that that's what you need out of her, and she's going to come out and do it. Against UCM, I think it was, or Mo West, our coach just expressed to her how she needed to kind of just step up into her role and really drive forward, you know, her purpose. And like, so our biggest thing is our middles have got to get in and get between the 2 of them 5 kills per set. And that's just our biggest thing for our middles is they need to get that every single time. And so they literally just told Soph, you know, after the first set, hey, we need you right now. Like, we need your production and stuff. And so she's just one of those players that you tell her what you need out of her and she's going to go out and get it done. She's not going to kind of slowly ease herself into it. Once you tell her what you need from her, it's going to get done right away after that. So that's what, you know, is really good about her. And then also you said the consistency is there. She's always going to go out and do her job and do what she needs to do. And she usually doesn't get rattled very easily within that. So it's really good to have that level-headedness in the middle, especially because it is such a tricky job.
And I think we've talked with football players a lot, and they talk about doing their 1/11. Don't do too much, but get your job done. And I think Sophia's just one of those nitty-gritties who she's going to say, I'm going to do my 1/6 for this team every time that we go out. And another player that I really kind of want to touch on, actually before this Mo West game, my co-host John Dykstra had not yet seen your team play this year. Missouri Western was the first time he saw you guys. I had kind of talked a little bit about Bethany Elkins and how last year she didn't see much playing time at all, really, and this year she had an opportunity to step up and play middle. And one of the things I talked about is, if you look, this is just a weird thing, but if you look at her height on the website, it says 5'9", which traditionally is a little small for a middle. And when I've talked to some of your girls, they talk about how she just makes up for it with her heart, her strength, and her ability to get up off the floor. She has been nothing short of almost just spectacular for this team. Can you talk about how she kind of stepped up and really just right away clicked with your group of girls?
Yeah, so I just remember her vaguely. This was after last season. You know, she obviously, no one was happy after our finish last season, but I vaguely remember her coming up to me after last season and saying, like, I'm done doing stuff on the bench. Like, I'm going to work my hardest and I'm going to get on that court next year. She was determined, and I've never seen just so much grit out of someone. And so this summer she was literally in the gym every single day. Like, she was up there, even if there wasn't a net, even if there wasn't someone working with her, she was up doing footwork. Like, she was literally up doing rep after rep of just footwork, not a volleyball on the court, just doing footwork. And that's such a big part of volleyball, is just your feet and like being comfortable with from the ground up, basically, because she had the arm swing, she has the body strength to get the job done. Yet it was just her getting rep after rep after rep. And so this summer I was so proud of her and just so amazed with the gains that she made. She was here all summer. She was bound, like, she was gritty. She was determined to get stuff done, and it's showing off now. Like, it's showing in her play right now what she did in the summer, and it was awesome as a captain or whatever, just to see that happening, because no one told her to go out and do it. She just did it because of what she told me at the end of last season.
And that's probably extremely exciting for you, as you said, as a captain not only, but as the senior. And this kind of being you're the 4 seniors on the team, this kind of being your last go-round, to see that drive out of young players really wanting to succeed. And one of the few notes that I made about the Missouri Western game is it was kind of back and forth most of the sets. And I think it was like 12-9 in the second set, or it could have been third set. And it was kind of slow. Bethany comes in, it's her time for the rotation, and she got a kill and a block just right back to back, and just the biggest smile on her face, and it kind of got the momentum going. And I just think what a moment for her, like you said, after being in the gym and really working for that moment to really kind of propel you guys and help you guys get all these victories and have a good season. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how kind of this all started, because as we see here, it's your senior year with Northwest. There's been talks here at the podcast that you might very well be one of the biggest staples in the volleyball program. Can you just kind of talk about your family real quick and how this love of this game has kind of been built into you for however long it has been?
My family was always just big into me finding what I love and just going out and doing it. I did a lot of different things growing up, but my dad was actually the one that really wanted me to start playing volleyball. And so then kind of just when I took off with it, they were my biggest supporters. They were there at every single club game. They come to every single college game. Like, they are there through thick and thin with me. And so they've always been there through all my ups and all my downs. They've just kind of been my rocks in a way. And I owe a lot of my successes to them, because they have just been so solid with me throughout all of it. And I mean, I obviously would not be here if they didn't contribute as much of their time to this game as they have.
And it really is incredible if you just think about all the driving back and forth from games, and even in high school, I know with club sports, and it's a lot of dedication, but like you said, to have parents that support that. And I'm sure, as most of us are excited, your parents are probably pretty excited for the upcoming weekend here that we have at home. So the fans, I hope, are very excited for that as well. Friday, you guys are going to see Fort Hays State, which is very exciting to get you guys back on a Friday. Kind of the big guns we'll see roll into town on Saturday. UNK, University of Nebraska Kearney, that's a 6:30 p.m. start after the football game. We expect to have a big crowd. UNK was kind of tied there at the top with Northwest and Washburn at that number 1 spot in the MIAA, nationally ranked. Very good team program that you girls know very well. Can you kind of talk about this upcoming weekend and what you guys are looking forward to?
Obviously, we have Fort Hays coming up on Friday, and they're just kind of one of those teams that they'll stick around if you let them. They're as good as you make them look, kind of things. So our biggest thing coming out is just setting a precedent at the very first point of the first set, and just going with it and just kind of flying with what we're given and putting the ball away quick, and just really trying to come out on top from the beginning against Fort Hays, because like I said, they will stick around if you let them, and they will get momentum if you let them have it. And then also just Saturday, the big game against Kearney. They're just a team that's always consistent. They're going to be very level the entire time. They're not going to get too high. They're never going to get too low. And then they just don't make a lot of errors either. That's just kind of their that's what they do. That's what's expected out of them. And so Kearney's just definitely very level, and so we're going to have to keep up with them in that sense of not erring as much, getting them out of system, because as most teams, they're not as good when they're out of system. So just like doing the little things and sticking to the game plan that coaches are going to put in front of us. And it's just going to have to be matching their consistency, if not being better.
Just a little bit here with Fort Hays on Friday. Like you said, it's going to be one of those things where you guys will set the pace. You need to set the pace early. And I think that's been kind of a theme for this year, is you guys want to make sure that you don't need to play extra sets and kind of get that done. So will that kind of help with momentum rolling into Saturday? If you guys can get in there, have a good team win, get the job done, and then be built up and rest well and be ready to go on Saturday.
Oh, for sure. Just like you said, getting in there and just taking care of business, feeling good. That's kind of the biggest thing, is just having a good feel going into Saturday, because a lot of it is based off of team feel and flow and stuff like that. Like we always talk about, like, find our flow. Like, where's our flow at? And so I think if we find that early on Friday, it's really going to help propel us into Saturday's night game. and just kind of carrying over that feeling and that excitement towards the game and just kind of that hunger, because we're going to have it no matter what, but definitely Friday's game is going to help encourage that even more.
And I know there's a lot of fans looking forward to this weekend, but as well as we look ahead, I know it's every game at a time and it's a long season, and the more focused you can stay on each opponent every day is very important. But really quick, can you just kind of touch on how much momentum and how much importance you guys put on really trying to make a run and have a successful season after in years past you guys haven't been as satisfied with where you've ended, and just the hunger that you guys have to continue to push?
Coach just always really emphasizes on we need to be our best at the end of the season, and that's so true, especially with in this conference. This conference is crazy good. I mean, you have 6 teams within this conference that can all possibly go into regionals and do well. So when Coach says we need to be the best at the end of the season, she's so right. Like, you need to be shining and just clean and sharp and crisp at the end of the season, because that's when it's the most important. That's kind of just our biggest thing right now, is keep doing what we're doing, but also finding ways to get better, 1% better every single day in practice. Maybe a couple percentages up there in games and stuff like that, and just finding our momentum and just really finding ways to be our best at the end of the season, because that's when it really counts, is when you get into that post-conference tournament and then into regionals after that.
As you mentioned, this is an extremely incredible conference built with a lot of powerhouses throughout. So I think also that kind of adds to your guys' success, being able to play a lot of strong teams throughout the regular season and be prepared for those teams once you get into conference tournament and hopefully regional play by the end of the season. Bearcat Nation is probably very excited to see how your guys' season has started, and listening to you talking about just getting 1% better every day is really extremely exciting. We will continue to cover that here on the Maryville Forum Sports Podcast. Thank you, Maddy Bruder, so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We are back with Jon on the Maryville Forum Sports Podcast. We're going to kind of look into what we will be covering next week. So another big week coming up for Bearcat Sports, as I said earlier with Phil. Bearcat football looks to bounce back on Saturday versus Emporia. They're at 1:30 p.m. and again, that is Military Appreciation Day. So I'm sure there'll be a big crowd to really support this team after that loss. On Friday, actually, let's jump a day before, women's soccer gets underway against Washburn. That's at 3 p.m. And after you go to that soccer game, you can head right on over to Bearcat Arena for women's volleyball as they take on Fort Hays State at 6 p.m. That's another conference match for them. And on Saturday, after you get to go to Military Appreciation Day, you can go into Bearcat Arena again to see the volleyball team play University of Nebraska Kearney. That's at 6:30 p.m. That's going to be a big game. University of Nebraska Kearney, Northwest, and Washburn were the top 3 teams in the MIAA, all tied for first. Nebraska Kearney actually just fell to Washburn. Jon, how excited are you for that UNK game?
It should be a great matchup. Like you said, you can knock out the 2 most successful teams Northwest has going on right now, football and volleyball, all in one day by just taking that little walk over there to see them go against one of the best teams in the country. If they could pull off that UNK game, then I think that would announce themselves to more than just the MIAA, which I think they already have, but really all of Division II volleyball as being one of those top teams around.
And it would definitely be a big win for them, like you said, for outside of the MIAA, but also kind of a momentum builder, as Northwest sports have been very exciting this year, but so have Spoofhound sports. What have we got to look forward to, Jon?
Spoofhound sports has a big week this week. It starts on Monday. By the time you're listening to this, we might already know how the girls golf team did, but they are at the conference tournament that is at St. Joe Country Club. Emily Long won it last year. She's the favorite to win it again. The team should win it as a team going in. The expectation is to win it at least, and they look poised for a big showing there. Then we transition to Tuesday. Softball, who's just been playing every day lately, has their senior night, and that's just a really big deal for those girls who started their careers at Maryville with a 3-win season as a freshman, and they worked their way up to 7 wins as a sophomore and 8 wins as juniors, and now they're already 10-5 to start out this year with a lot of season left. So go out there and honor the seniors, Jacqueline Hirsch, Emma Baldwin, Summer Swally, and Jillian Partridge. They've really given a lot to that sport, and then it just keeps rolling. On Wednesday, we've got the MEC conference meet for tennis, and there should be some good results in there too for your Spoofhounds. And finally, we're not hitting all the sports here. Obviously, it's a full schedule every day for them, but it wraps up with senior night on Friday night when betting comes to the Hound Pound. So go out there and support the football team as well, as they honor a whole ton of seniors that they have this year.
And, this is a very exciting week for Northwest Sports as well as Spoofhound Sports. And like you said, there's been a lot of success all across the board with these programs. So definitely there'll be a lot of fans out there watching. If for some reason you miss them or you just want to stay caught up on what happened, you can find the articles on the MaryvilleForum.com, or you can listen to us here on the Forum Sports Podcast, brought to you by Compass Dental Doctors Bruce Twaddle and Brian Viertaler. Every Monday we release it, but don't worry, if you miss it on Monday, you can catch up. So again, as always, I'm your host, Erin Sorensen, with John Dykstra, and we look forward to bringing you another week of the podcast.
Bringing you all the latest Nottoway County high school and Bearcat sports each week.
10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45.
Starring Erin Sorensen and John Dykstra on the Maryville Forum Sports Podcast.
He ran it back 109 yards. They're not going to keep him off the field.
Coming to you from the campus of Northwest Missouri State University.